They say we are born with just two fears, incorporated in human DNA, basic survival mechanisms to keep us alive and safe from potential dangers from the day we are born. Firstly, the fear of loud noises, and secondly, the fear of falling. From the day you are born, if you feel a loss of balance or like you're falling, your central nervous system will produce something called the Moro reflex, which effectively makes you cling to your mother. We're adaptive, and so is fear. Many psychologists believe that we learn the rest of our fears, but you don't develop a fear of falling from a great height because you've fallen. It is the very reason you haven't fallen from a great height. So they are divided about what you are born with and what you learn and why. You can learn to overcome your fears, even the ones hardwired from birth, but it'd be wise to understand we must display a level of fear for survival reasons. The same will apply to the way we respond to our emotions, especially the negative ones. Anger, sadness, fear, anxiety, hurt, guilt or shame. Learning to control them will help you perform at your best, but you have them for a reason. So I would be lying if I said I didn't have some trepidation about climbing out of this window a few stories up. It's human nature. The scaffolders, the builders and roofers working on this project do it every day. They don't find the mere thought of a perilous drop so debilitating they can't get out here and work, on the edge, but many of them don't mind sharing with me that they are still not completely relaxed up here. And out here they still have somewhere at the back of their minds the fear of falling and the harm that could result from it. It's one of the reasons they haven't fallen, and falling from parts of the top deck of this scaffold in most cases would be fatal. We think of fear as being a negative thing, something we need to overcome or to be avoided, but fear can have powerful and positive effects too. Fear is evolution's way of keeping us safe in the face of danger. When initiated, fear can unleash abilities you never knew you had, unlocking powers your consciousness would believe impossible. Fear removes all your conscious checks and stops, and your subconscious takes over, and it can respond to problems far faster than you can. So am I going to tell you how to overcome your fears? No, that's not the purpose of this vlog. I'm simply going to climb on my roof, pour myself a drink and show you hopefully an amazing sunset over London. And I'm not a qualified psychiatrist, and the internet's full already of unqualified quacks offering such advice and profiting by taking advantage of people's fears. Don't try any of this at home, and be very careful whose advice you listen to. There's a phrase, a line from a George Bernard Shaw play: "He who can does, he who cannot teaches." And it's very true. I work in the jewellery trade, and most of the people teaching it, even at university level, they never made it as commercial jewellers. There are a few though who made it to the top of their game and then began to teach, bringing with them decades of experience and both commercial success and importantly some failures. And they're the ones you really want to listen to and pay attention to. The ones who made a career out of doing what you want to do before they began teaching it, not the ones who made a career out of teaching it. My flat is currently being renovated. The whole thing is clad in scaffolding. It's a huge inconvenience babysitting builders, roofers and all the tradespeople every day. But there's an opportunity in the adversity in as much as I have access to the roof to film time-lapse sunsets. I live in a Victorian style terrace above a shop. They call them Victorian townhouses, but in the traditional sense townhouses were the city residences of nobility or gentry as opposed to their country seat or country home. By modern London standards it's massive, but by Victorian standards it would have been modest and probably would have been the family home of the shopkeepers. I say style because it looks like a Victorian building and it's built like a Victorian building, but it was completed certainly by 1915. But probably not before the turn of the century in 1901. It was built for John Sainsbury's and was one of the earliest and original Sainsbury's stores here in London, and built long before the first supermarkets. Old pictures attribute the building to circa 1920, but it was definitely up and running by then, and the council say the store was open in 1915, and obviously construction would have taken some time. John Sainsbury's established his first London store a few miles from here in Holborn in 1869. And within a decade of this particular one where I live being built, J. Sainsbury's was incorporated as a private company, and at the time of incorporation in 1922 became the UK's largest grocer. They say when J. Sainsbury died in 1928 there were 128 stores, and his dying words were "keep the stores well lit." Long before that and before this store was built, Sainsbury's was considered innovative by replacing the sawdust covered floors and wooden counters used in other food retailers with marble counters, mosaic floors and white tiled walls. When I was young, there were still a few shops in London with sawdust floors. Very few, but I remember a cafe just off Hatton Garden when I first started work still having them. It's a real throwback to the past. I can't think of anywhere with them today. I remember it not because of the food, but the floors, because you leave with your shoes covered in sawdust. It was so annoying, and you could smoke indoors then, and people did. Even the old woman cooking your breakfast did. Thinking about now, it's just insane. And the sawdust wasn't little pieces of dust, it was like shavings of wood. It was perfect kindling to start a fire. Anyway, part of Sainsbury's innovation was staff uniforms of white aprons, which, remember, we're talking over 100 years ago. Everything simple we take for granted today was once innovative. But also stores were made to look similar for two reasons. Firstly, so people would recognise them throughout London. And secondly, they put pictures of a store in adverts on the side of coaches and the billboards of the day. So that may explain why this building was built in a slightly older way and styled to its contemporaries. Maybe it was to be in keeping with some of the much older buildings adjacent to it. Maybe it was just because architectural style in building in the area didn't really change until the 1920s, when a more modern European design became favourable to the more decorative traditional Victorian buildings. But maybe it was just the way they had always done things and it fitted their corporate image. Whatever the reason, J. Sainsbury's would have undoubtedly come here to inspect the store and maybe even overseen elements of its construction. And although he would recognise it today, he would probably be unimpressed with its current condition, hence the renovation work. This store was built long before self-service as we know it today was invented, and home delivery featured in this and every store when it was built, as there were few cars in those days. And I read Sainsbury's sites were carefully chosen with a central position in a parade which could be kept cooler in summer, which was important as there was no refrigeration, which explains why this place is so cold in summer and winter. It's by design, not by accident. And every room has high ceilings, sash windows and coal fires, which are the only things capable of heating such sized rooms. When they built this shop, another innovation was what they called round the back deliveries. Only customers came through the front doors. In fact, the entrance to the flat above is via the old goods entrances and stores, and the only remaining evidence this was ever a Sainsbury's is in one of the round the back stores, which was once the shop's in-house but out-of-sight butchers and fishmongers. Whole animals would have been delivered round the back to what was then a wet room and butchered and prepared on site for the store. When I first moved here, this was all still intact as a butcher's, with sinks, working areas all tiled, but all that remains is one sink and the old meat hook rails. The rest was removed to incorporate the electrics of the new store occupants.
By mystics and visionary philosophers. By mystics and visionary philosophers.
You may be wondering what's in my rucksack, apart from my tripod, and why it was chinking when I pulled out my tripod. I want to enjoy a drink while I'm up here watching and filming tonight's sunset, so I've brought up with me all the gear to make a Negroni. And what cocktail snobs will no doubt tell me in the comments, all the gear and no idea. Making food and drink is very simple, we all do it every day, but doing it on YouTube is very demanding. There are many critics, and I can assure you that when foodies or cocktail snobs watch this, they are not looking for new ideas or inspiration or an opportunity to praise me. They are looking for something, well, anything to criticise or correct. The basis of a Negroni cocktail is simple. Equal parts of three things: Campari, sweet vermouth and gin. They're normally stirred in a glass with ice and garnished with orange. If you replace the gin with champagne or prosecco, you have a Negroni Sbagliato. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's Italian for mistake or mistaken. And if you substitute the gin for a larger dose of soda water, you have an Americano. So the ingredients are pretty useful, as you can make a few different drinks. For my Negroni, I'm using Campari, Tanqueray gin, and the vermouth I'm using is my secret ingredient, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Now, there are lots of gins and lots of vermouths, and each tastes a little different. So this is my favourite blend of Negroni. For me, the gin used doesn't make as much difference as the vermouth, and I've found my favourite is Carpano Antica formula. It's been in production since 1786 and was one of the first vermouths produced and still in production today. It's a little tricky to track down a bottle, but it's worth it. My favourite way of making this drink, which would horrify the purists and cocktail snobs, is to take the Negroni and top it up with water. Turn it into a long drink. You could call it a Negroni and tonic or an Americano with a shot of gin. If I want one in a bar, I have to just order a Negroni and a separate bottle of tonic. Firstly, because my girlfriend is one of the cocktail snobs and refuses to be a part of it. And secondly, bartenders tend to think it's their job to educate you, not serve you. So if you order a Negroni and tonic, the look on their face says, please leave my bar. Some ice and a slice would be nice, but I don't have all the luxuries of a cocktail bar up here. And here's the final point of sacrilege. When I top the drink up, instead of tonic or soda at home, I use Perrier water. It wasn't my original idea. Using Perrier in cocktails is actually a line from a James Bond novel, and Ian Fleming knew what he was talking about. In his opinion, expensive soda water was the cheapest way to improve a poor drink. Perrier contains natural carbonisation and natural minerals. It's rarely used in cocktails, and compared to the waters that are used, the soda waters, it's relatively expensive. Seltzer, club soda are just cheap man-made copies of natural sparkling water like Perrier. They add the bubbles and sometimes even the trace minerals. So natural sparkling water is an obvious superior alternative to soda water. Tonic water, however, contains quinine. It's impossible to pronounce that. So it does taste different. It gives it a unique bitter flavour which does go very well with gin. But it also contains calories, unlike sparkling water. So if you're looking for some truly slimline tonic, try Perrier for a change. It's different, it tastes lighter and less bitter, but you do tend to notice and taste the more subtle botanical flavours of the gin you're using. And you never know, you might just like it. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up, like button. And if you'd like to be the first to see my new films, the subscribe button. Toodles.